Tonight's episode of The Bad Batch was a bit of a slower one. It was a bit of a filler, if I do say so myself, and a lot of you in the live stream thought so too. Not too much happened this episode. I mean, I can essentially just say in a rundown, if you don't have too much time, that Omega finds out that she is important to Hemlock, which we already knew, and we find out that the kids in the vault are all an important part of the puzzle. So anyways, let's go through the whole episode. It's just going to take a few minutes here, and then we can talk about the theories that will come after this with the final 3 episodes. So Omega arrives on Mount Tantus, and she immediately is taken to Hemlock's custody and taken into blood testing by Dr. Carr, telling her that Nala Se is no longer going to work with her. Now, Carr takes Omega's blood, and we definitely see foreshadowing here of her conflict already. Kind of seems like, that's really the whole mantra of Star Wars is conflict. Inner conflict, that is. We know Emery's going to join sides with Omega eventually. The boys argue with Crosshair about letting her go, and he tells them that the Empire would have flattened the whole town, except for, of course, Mace Windu, if it wasn't for her turning herself in. He tells Wrecker and Hunter about Rampart, and how he sent Nala Se to Tantus. He doesn't mention this earlier, I should say, is because he doesn't want to ever go back to Tantus. Clearly, whatever they did to him there was extremely traumatic, and he suffers from major PTSD. So his whole neurological issue with his hand has nothing to do with any neurons or anything with his neurology. It has to do with his stress. He tells Wrecker and Hunter about Rampart and how he sent Nala Se to Tantus. The Empire arrested Rampart when they framed him, kind of like a scapegoat, for opening fire on Kamino, when we all know that of course it was Palpatine's orders. Phee shows up and they take her ship to an Imperial labor camp on Erebus. Now, Phee is not my favorite character, but it was nice to see her because she reminds us of Tech, and she, says any friend of Brown Eyes is a friend of mine. Her association with Sid back in the day just never rubbed me right. And that's another character I hope we'll never see, Sid. This is where we meet up with Rampart as he's somewhat of a mining slave. I'm just going to run through it for you guys. The crew lands stealthily and they intercept Rampart by taking out the troopers. When Rampart remembers CT-9904, which is Crosshair, Crosshair tells him that they want the location of Tantus' base. So Rampart bargains and tells them to get him off of the planet for the information. They oblige, and it's cool to see the Juggernauts again from Revenge of the Sith on Kashyyyk, and of course the Clone Wars. There's a bridge game of chicken. Rampart gets a hold of a blaster, and Crosshair gets some of his mojo back by shooting the blaster out of his hand. It seems his powers are returning, but when he thinks of Tantus, they get worse. The boys fight off some stormtroopers. We get a little Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Last Crusade Easter egg, with the stormtrooper hitting the wall during the mountain road chase. Phee shows up and they get off the planet. Omega and Dr. Carr test blood as in walks Hemlock, and this sound, I can't remember where it's from, maybe you guys in chat can remember, but I think it's from Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast. It's the sound of when the door was opening. Hemlock talks about Omega's blood showing favorable M-count replication. Now remember, Omega is able to fuse with someone who has the Force, who has a high midichlorian count, and can therefore create a successful clone. At least that's what I gathered from it, and most of you during the live stream. Hemlock takes her to the vault, telling her that her blood sample mixed with one of their midichlorian blood specimens is the perfect recipe for it working. As he opens the door to the room with all of the Force-sensitive kids, he says they are the rest of the puzzle, and this is your new home, and the door slams. So of course, the episode ends, and I think all of these kids have some missing DNA that when they're put together, it fits perfectly with Omega's to make the viable host needed for Palpatine to continue Project Necromancer. And I think what her use is with all of these other children with high M counts, or let's be real, just a high midichlorian count, is that once they combine them and maybe engineer them a little bit somehow, then we'll be able to clone Force sensitives in perpetuity forever. And I think that's going to be extremely valuable to Palpatine, as then he can make an unlimited number of clones that have the Force without any sort of drawback with, psychosis or disobedience or, lack of the Force. I think going forwards, eventually Carr is going to side with Omega. The boys are going to go to Tantus with Rampart's help. They're probably going to get in some classified areas, and maybe in the end we'll learn what Palpatine was actually looking at in his vault that he went to. I'm a big fan of this show. I gotta say, I've become quite invested in the story, in the characters. I've grown quite attached to the characters, and I'm sad to see them go. But with 3 episodes left, I felt like this episode in particular was quite filler-esque. It really didn't get across anything we didn't know already, other than seeing a bit of a team up with the boys and understanding that all of the children with the high midichlorian counts are actually important pieces of a larger machine. Now, what that larger machine is, I'm not sure, but I think it's all in part to make Palpatine the perfect host in order to clone Force sensitives going forwards. And maybe this is where Grogu falls in, but I'm not entirely sure. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and the breakdown. Please do leave a like if you did, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember, the Force will be with you always.